Tonight we're going to draw to a conclusion on our series, Faith Under Fire. I hope that these lessons have been encouraging. I hope they've been strengthening. I hope they have helped each one of us grow as Christians during a time that's been pretty tough on all of us. We've looked at, talked about things. We've looked at the life of Job, faith when all your castles crumble. We've looked at the widow that gave 2 small coins, faith when funds are low. We've looked at several different things, but tonight I want to try to just pull everything together as we look at the topic, what to do when your faith is under fire. Because no matter what, when we get through this coronavirus thing, when we get through this 2020 presidential election, when we get through the riots and protests and all of the things that we're enduring right now, and we will get through all of these, but when we get through all of these things, guess what? There's going to be something else. There's going to be something else. We are always, as Christians, going to be under attack. It's just that simple. Satan is always going to be doing something to destroy this world and to destroy our faith. That's just a fact. We can try to ignore it. We can pretend that it's not there. But all that's going to do is weaken our immune system, our defense, and make us more vulnerable. So if we can just understand that we are going to be under attack, that Satan is going to try everything within his power, and as you have heard me say on numerous occasions, do not ever underestimate the power of Satan. I think 2 of the biggest mistakes that we make as Christians both involve underestimating power. We underestimate the power of God, and we underestimate the power of Satan. When we underestimate the power of God, we miss out on a whole lot of blessings. When we underestimate the power of Satan, we end up as one of Satan's servants. It's just that way. So what to do when your faith is under fire? Solomon wrote in Proverbs chapter 3, beginning at verse 5, "Trust the Lord with all your heart. Don't depend on your own understanding. Remember the Lord in all you do, and He will give you success." So point number 1, step number 1 of what to do when your faith is under fire is trust God despite disturbing circumstances. No matter how bad it looks out there, no matter how powerful Satan is, no matter how dark the world becomes, no matter how much we look and sit and think that how in the world are we going to overcome? We trust God. We trust God. Because how do we overcome some of these things? Can I let you in on a little secret? We don't. He does. We don't overcome. God does. And He carries us along with Him and lets us enjoy it. So we follow God. We trust God no matter what, no matter how bad things look, no matter how bad things seem to get, we trust God. You know, I guess one of the best examples of that concept is Jesus Christ Himself. He was in the garden. He knew what was before Him, the crucifixion. He knew. He took His disciples with Him, and then He went a little bit deeper in the garden, and He took His 3 best friends with Him to keep lookout, to pray for Him also, just to be there. And Jesus prays. He prays, I believe, like He has never prayed before. His prayer is not this formal, getting all the words right. His prayer was Him and the Father talking. And He pours His heart out. And He prays, Father, if it's Your will, if there's anything else we can do, if there's any other option, can't we try it? But Jesus prayed the hardest prayer for any of us. Not my will, but Yours be done. That was a hard prayer for Jesus, because at that point, Jesus was human. And that's a hard prayer for me. And I would imagine it's a hard prayer for you, because we like our will. We like to get our way. You know, Burger King made a fortune. What was their slogan? Have it your way. Man, I like that. I can get a hamburger however I want it. But we've got to trust God. And trusting God means saying, God, I don't have to have it my way. I know that Your way is best. So let's have it Your way. Trust God despite disturbing circumstances. In Romans 8, verse 28, a passage of Scripture that should give all of us encouragement, that should strengthen each one of us as we go through tough times, as we experience our faith under fire. Paul said, we know. Let's look at that. We know. He doesn't say, well, we're kind of hoping. He says, we know that in everything. Okay, do I need to break that word down? He doesn't say in some things. He doesn't say in the important things or the little things. He says in everything, God works for the good of those who love Him. They are the people He called because that was His plan. In everything, God works for good. So second step, realize that God can and will use bad things or calamities or troubles or trials or tribulations or whatever word you want to use. God can and will use these things for your good. Now, it may not be what you think is good, but it's what's best. It's what God knows is good for each one of us. And after all, shouldn't God know what's best for us more than anyone else? After all, He's the one that created us. He's the one that designed us. He's the one that keeps us going. So realize, in spite of all the problems, God can use these things. God can use these calamities, these catastrophes, bad things. God can use bad things to make good things happen. In Colossians 3, verse 23, in all the work you're doing, work the best you can. Work as if you were doing it for the Lord, not for people. Work. Work for God. So the third step is nope. Someone have a note sheet I can borrow for a second? See if I can figure out what my point was going to be. Do your best, no matter what. Do your best, no matter what. You know, everything we do, we're doing as servants of God. Everything we do, we're doing because we are God's children. And God deserves our best. God demands our best. So even when we're struggling, even when we're having problems, if we do the best we can do, and we give God our best, He's going to be there, and He's going to make up the difference in what's needed and take us the rest of the way. Then in Genesis, most of us are familiar with the story of Joseph. Joseph had been sold into slavery by his brothers. He had had many ups and downs all through this time. He was at the top, he was at the bottom, he was top in the kingdom, and he was in prison, just up and down, up and down. But Joseph served God through everything. And Joseph was in a place that God wanted him to be. You see, Joseph is a good example of that point where we said that God can and will use bad things to work out something that's good. You see, God used Joseph being sold into slavery, being in prison, to put Joseph in a place where he could take care of his family, of God's people, when God needed him to. But in Genesis chapter 50, as the brothers finally realized who Joseph was, and they were afraid, which I can understand. If you'd have sold your brother into slavery and you found him and you found out, first of all, you found out he was alive. Then you found out he was probably one of the most powerful men on the face of the earth. You'd probably be a little bit scared. But listen to what Joseph said. Joseph said to them, "Don't be afraid. Can I do what only God can do?" Joseph said, "I'm not God. I can't do what God does. I can't punish you. I can't do anything." But listen to what Joseph goes on. He says, "You meant to hurt me, but God turned your evil into good to save the lives of many people, which is being done." Joseph said, "You meant to hurt me, but God meant for it to be a good thing." And that's what's happening. So the fourth step, and this may be the most difficult, which might make it the most important, because sometimes it's a struggle. But it's something we've got to do. And that is forgive offenders and let God deal with them. Forgiving is not easy. Forgiving is not easy. Wasn't intended to be. But when we understand what forgiveness is, when we understand the forgiveness that we receive from God, how can we not extend that forgiveness to others? And we've just got to get to the point where, like we talked about last week, faith when others are against us. And yes, there are days when it seems like the whole world is against us. But that's not our problem. It's theirs. We just trust God. We turn it over to God. We turn the whole situation over to God, including their judgment. We need to get out of the judging business and get in the forgiving business. Trusting God to forgive us and to do whatever He sees best in regards to whoever has offended or whoever has harmed us. But until we can learn to forgive, all the troubles, all the trials, all the fires that attack our faith are going to keep attacking. Because I think one of Satan's top tools is that unforgiving spirit. And if he can keep us unforgiving, then he can also keep us unforgiven. Because that's what Jesus said. Jesus said, God will forgive us as we forgive. So I hope that Our time the last few weeks has been encouraging and uplifting, and I hope it's been beneficial to each one of us, because, as I say, we're going to experience faith under fire. But what makes the difference is how we come through it. And you know, I'll share one of my favorite Bible stories and specific lines. At least it's one of my favorite right now because it goes with this sermon. And that's the story of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, that refused to worship the king, refused to bow down, and ended up being thrown in the fiery furnace. When they were brought out, and this is one of my, again, it's a great story. First of all, when they were thrown in, they said, you know, our God is going to take care of us. Our God's going to deliver us. But if He doesn't, that's all right, because we're still not going to bow down and worship you. We're still only going to worship God. But then as they were thrown into the fiery furnace, they were delivered by God. And here's the point I want us all to get as we conclude this series. We can come through our faith under fire in the same way that Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego came out of the fiery furnace. And the Bible records it for us and says they didn't even smell like smoke. Man, that's powerful. That's powerful. Trust God. Trust God. Depend on Him. Follow His way. And when Satan throws his fire at us, we won't even get the smell on our clothes. That's the power of God.